Next, we have James Hankins, Renaissance historian and professor at Harvard University. Thank
you. Yes, I was thinking when you were saying about the motto of Harvard is Veritas. A couple of years I thought they should change the name to the motto of the town of Arpino, which produced Marius and Cicero. And the motto of Arpino is Hinc ad Imperium, from here to empire. But what I want to talk about in my brief time is not the entire sweep of history, but one man who used his free will to change things and was at the right moment, which we are also at the right moment to do so. So in my lecture the other night, some of you were there, I know, I talked about this passage in the Paradiso where it's right in the center of the Divine Comedy. It's Canto 16 of the Purgatorio, right halfway. Now, mezzo di camino of the Divine Comedy, and they're in a murk that no one knows how to get out. But there is stinging smoke, and it's miserable, and they're surrounded by the prideful. So Dante asked Virgil, his guide, what's wrong with this world? What's wrong with this world? It's falling apart. And the empire and the papacy are at each other's throats. And there's an explanation of that, which I talked about in the lecture. But right before they talk about what's wrong with the political side of the world, Virgil says to Petrarch, let me back up. Petrarch says to Virgil, he says, it's probably the stars, right? It's fate. It's, we can't do anything about it. It's the stars, the astrology is the equivalent of forces and factors in history today, and forces that we can't control are controlling our lives. And Virgil comes back and says, no, we have free will. You can change this, right? So Dante tries to change things, but so does Petrarch. I want to talk about Petrarch, because Petrarch is somebody who really changed things. He was a man, in my history of Renaissance political thought, I identify him as the real Fons and Argo of the Italian Renaissance. There were people interested in the classics all through the Middle Ages. There were lots of Italians, especially in the time of Dante. In fact, there were scholars who were trying to get Dante to write the Divine Comedy in Latin. Dante very wisely said no. But Petrarch is the one who turns all of these impulses in his time into a movement. And he lived at a terrible time. I once had a professor in college who said to me, the 14th century is a bad century. I'm sitting there, a Cal undergraduate, and I say, how can a century be bad? Come on. But the 14th century, I will tell you, is a bad century. And it starts at as we now say, the long 14th century. It starts in 1291 with the fall of the last Crusader kingdom in the Holy Land. So if, in effect, the period after the Crusades have failed. And then all the soldiers have come back, and they have no high enterprise to follow. So what they do is they turn themselves into gangsters, and they start armies, and they start marching all over France and all over Italy. They come to Italy in the summertime, of course, and they maraud, and they shake down the cities. And then there's a famine, a huge famine, the worst famine in the Middle Ages, in the 1330s. And then in 1342, there's a breakdown of the financial system, the first big banking crisis when Europe just goes bankrupt. No one can get a loan for the next 20 years. And then, of course, there's the Black Death, which is not COVID. The Black Death wipes out 40% of the population. Okay, it's not 1/15 of 1%, it's 40%. Their bodies in the streets, okay. So Petrarch is living through all this, and he starts out his life as his father wanted him to be a lawyer, That's why he sent him to Bologna. But when he got to Bologna, he discovered that he'd get much more interest from the ladies and the other young people there if he wrote poetry. So he became a great Italian poet and famous all over Italy, all over Europe. And he had his lady love, Laura, who was his inspiration to high divine, holy poetry. But then the Black Death hits, and a lot of his friends die, and his patron dies. The patron is controlling, who's gives him the job. So what do? They're absolutely stunned by this. He gets together with his friends. He has a few friends who have survived. They decide they're going to go to some place in the hills, and they're going to copy manuscripts. This is before printing, right? So they're thinking, God is really punishing us. There's something desperately wrong with our world. And the only thing we can do is to copy manuscripts so that some future age will be able to revive our culture. And then he gets involved with Cola di Rienzo. You might know the Wagner opera of Rienzi, right? So Cola di Rienzo is a revolutionary, and he is also a reader of Livy and wants to bring back the Roman Empire. And Petrarch loves this at first, and he becomes the publicity manager for Cola di Rienzo's Roman Revolution. But it all falls apart very quickly, and Petrarch realizes that political revolution is not the answer. Right. Political revolution, he understood what happened to Cola di Rienzo. He's the humanist dream. He's a meritocratic figure whose mother was a laundry woman, his father's an innkeeper. Cola di Rienzo, by the way, means next son of Larry in Roman dialect. Okay, so he's not an exalted figure, but he has an exalted idea, and he's trying to bring back the Roman Empire, but the crooked timber of humanity will allow that. So Petrarch realizes that kind of force majeure, that kind of political movement is not going to work. That the real problem, as he says, the real problem is human nature. It's the lack of goodness in human nature. And he's looking around him, and he's surrounded by armies and warlords and people. He looks at the universities, and in his view, not the view of many modern people, but in the view of Petrarch, the universities are a total disaster. In Italy, the universities are mostly teaching law, a little bit of medicine. So Petrarch decides that he has to change human nature. So he gets a program together, which he calls the humanities, the Studia Humanitatis, which are going to transform human nature through poetry, history, moral philosophy, oratory, eloquence, poetry, history, moral philosophy, which are not covered in the seven liberal arts, you'll notice. Rhetoric is, but it's different from oratory. And the idea is that these new studies are going to change the human heart and make it possible to have a Renaissance. So he goes throughout the rest of his life. He's not really sure whether he's going to succeed. He has some like-minded people. He has an enormous correspondence. He has the Familiares letter and then the letters of old age. He knows everybody in Europe. Everybody from the emperor and the pope down to the local schoolmaster. And he's a very charming man. He's tall, he's handsome, he has apparently a fascinating voice. He talks Latin. He's trying to talk people into the idea of making better human beings, improving the quality of humanity through the study of the humanities. And the way you do that is you get in touch with antiquity. You return to antiquity. You seek the ancient mother, as Virgil says. And so he develops an educational program called the Humanities, which is going to supplement the existing seven liberal arts, and which will operate outside the universities. And he trains a few people, his close disciples, but mainly he's not a school teacher himself. He likes to live with princes and get them on side with his project. He lived with several princes in the course of his later life. But the project, when he went to his grave in 1474, thinking he had failed, because there was one prince who took him up on his project to renew the humanities. But what Petrarch wasn't aware of is he had hundreds and thousands of admirers who read his works. And he decided that, and what happened was after he died, that those seeds that he dropped in the ground, they grew. And they created the humanist movement, which was a revolution in humanistic education, which is what we have to do, is to have a renaissance of our own. And it's in the Western tradition. We do renaissances in the Western tradition. So it's been done by the church fathers, it was done in the 12th century, it was done in the 15th century. We can do it today. All right.
We're here.